Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB194 is a bill that would prohibit state or local official that is responsible for the conduct of an election, his or her employee, from soliciting, accepting, or using donations of money, grants, property, or personal services from an individual or non-governmental entity for the purpose of funding certain election-related expenses, including voter education, voter outreach, or voter registration programs. Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to answer any questions at this time.
There's only three. We'll allow 3 individuals to speak, and you have about 2 minutes, give or take a minute or two. Carla Woodall.
Good afternoon. My name is Carla Woodall. I serve as the absentee election manager in Houston County, and I come to you not only in that capacity, but also as a citizen for the state of Alabama. When this bill first came early in the session, pardon me, Wes, but I thought it was somewhat of a fluff bill until I peeled that onion back and got to realizing that privatization of our elections is key, and the prevention of that is key as well. At what point do you stop private groups from donating to our elections? And that's essentially what it is. Special interest groups in donating funds. Our government is responsible for it. You have 2 voices in government. One is to go to the polls and vote, and one is to serve as a juror. In the judicial system, we have to keep those scales balanced. The same in elections. With private donations, you're tipping those scales of that election before those voters even get to the polls. By private groups giving money to our elections, you decrease the integrity of our elections as well as the confidence of voters for our elections. Election officials serve at the pleasure of the public, and it's funded by government, and it should remain that way. I think it's even sad that we're even having to have this legislation and discuss it. So I ask for you to give it a favorable report and keep the funding with government. Thank you.
Can we ask a question? Wait, I have a question. I'm confused. You talk about giving donations to people who are in public office or running for public office, or are you talking about election or the voting process, which is a nonpartisan process?
The actual process. In other words, a special interest group purchasing computers and giving them to elected officials to utilize those computers to work elections.
Okay, give me an example.
A private interest group for an election office donating money for them to use to buy the machines or computers or printers or supplies or paper. Next thing you know, those election officials are in debt to those private companies or special interest groups. Does that make sense? Am I answering your question?
Not really. You're answering the question, but it doesn't really make sense because the vote is still a private vote.
Correct.
And you know, so what are we saying, that they're in there changing votes?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. What I'm saying is that election officials in government is responsible for ensuring that our elections are financed, not on the backs of special interest groups. So in other words, this is not money given to candidates or people running for office. This is money to actually fund our elections, whether it's for publicity of dates of when to come, where polls are going to be, how they are staffed with individuals, with poll workers, in any capacity that government funds are used to fund an election.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I'm misreading the bill, but the bill says that during the state of public health emergency, donations of items for the preservation or protection of the public health is to be used by the voters or election officials. that's what the bill says, and it's not about computers and money and everything else that we're mentioning here. It's about, like, during the pandemic when we were trying to have elections and we didn't have enough masks and that kind of stuff. It's about the public health. This bill is not about a broad range of things. So I would just challenge you to read the first few sentences there.
Senator Allen, Representative Allen, say a word about the amendment and how it doesn't fit in with what you're trying to do.
Yes, it's an exemption. So in case there is, it was not originally in the bill, Senator Chambliss. We added that on the House floor when we had debate on it. It basically says if there's another public health emergency, which I hope there's not in our lifetime or ever, that local public officials who are over our elections can accept materials like hand sanitizers, masks, PPE materials to help protect the public if there's ever another health crisis like what we went through back in 2020.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Kathy Jones.
Can I ask him a question
Yes,
before
ma'am.
he sits down, please?
Excuse me.
Okay, so that particular part of the bill also, so there could be, you know, a statewide or a national or international health emergency, but there also could be something that's more local. And the way that's written to me makes it sound like it can only occur, those donations can only be accepted if it's equally distributed throughout the whole state. But the crisis could be local and not statewide. So that concerned me.
Yes, ma'am. I understand.
You would review that area,
Yes, sir.
Kathy?
Hi. Good afternoon. I wanted to mention that we did have 5 speakers that came from across Alabama to speak today, and I understand you said we only had 3, so we had thought we had up to 6. So just thought I'd clarify that. If there's time, we'd like to let you hear from.
Yeah, but we only had about 15 minutes to
Okay, well,
get everybody in.
okay, thank you. All right, well, good afternoon. I'm Kathy Jones. I'm president of the Alabama League of Women Voters, and I wanted to express my appreciation to the members of the Senate Government Affairs Committee for today's hearing. For over 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been a completely volunteer, nonpartisan, strictly nonpartisan political organization with members living in counties across Alabama. And we proudly acknowledge the contributions and impact that the powerful, patriotic Alabama women and men who have advocated and fought for voting rights in Alabama and across the country. The League of Women Voters is one of many local, non-governmental voting rights groups who walk in their footsteps, and we serve all of Alabama, and we provide voter education, voter registration, and voter outreach opportunities to every person, including young and old, poor and wealthy. I wanted to clarify a misperception that I'd heard on the news recently. We don't just set up tables in isolation. We actually work very closely with our elections officials in the counties where we're located and across the state. And we work hard to provide accurate, timely, reliable information, and we work 365 days a year, and we work and communicate and collaborate with elections officials routinely to make sure that we're providing a service that meets the need. And the confusing catch-all term of personal services is the problem. That, coupled with mandatory jail time and monetary penalties for county election officials and their staff, is not good. It'll generate an atmosphere of uncertainty and reluctance to communicate and collaborate with organizations such as the League of Women Voters, and is going to place one more burden of fear and potential for intimidation on hardworking, selfless election workers who are conducting secure elections that also must protect the health and safety of workers, their election staff, poll workers, the voters. And we should be encouraging civic engagement and participation in democracy without sowing doubt, fear, or division. And the language of HB194 is confusing, but the intent is really clear. And we are asking that you please strike the personal services language or just kill the bill because it is not doing the Alabama a good service.
Thank you very much. Let's see if we can move along. We're going to have about 10 minutes to ask questions if we can get through the hearing. Senator, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Question.
Yes, sir.
I just had a question for you, is it Kathy? Yeah, does this stop the League of Women from registering people to vote still, which is what you're saying that you wanted to do?
We
with
would
it?
still, well, we're still going to get out there and work on registering voters. The problem is a lot of times there are questions that some of the citizens will be working with us, and we go back and sit and work with the registrars, or we may hold events with the registrars. We've gone, for example, with the state of Alabama, we go with the Secretary of State's voter ID van often and actually sit with them and help them if they need voting rights restoration assistance. And so it's more of like a one-on-one. If we have questions, we work with the people that are in those offices. And we're just concerned that this is going to dampen, put a wet blanket basically on working with groups like ours.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Michael Bunn.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to my senator and my representative. I'm here to speak as a proponent for this bill. I am the judge of probate for Pike County, chief election officer for Pike County, and I believe that we do need to make sure that we don't have private money interfering in our elections, and this has the potential for that. Over $400 million was spent throughout the country. Certainly places like Pennsylvania, where you hear so many people concerned, one of the counties, Chester County, Pennsylvania, got $2.5 million. Their budget was only $2.3 million for elections. That makes a significant impact. And when that money is being spread out in different counties in different ways, I think that that's dangerous, and we don't want that in Alabama. Right now, our friends in Mississippi who have a similar bill are dealing with a $300,000 amount that they need to figure out what's wrong through their auditor. Again, I don't want to see that in our offices. My folks don't need money from private entities. We receive all the money we need from the state.
Thank you, sir. Hugh Evans.
While he's coming, Mr. Chairman, is this a problem in the state? I mean,
No. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm
members of
aware.
the commission, I'm Hugh Evans. I'm with the Office of the Secretary of State. And first of all, let me say we are adamantly opposed to the privatization of elections. However, we cannot support this bill because of one issue. One of the biggest parts of our outreach is our mobile ID photo units, where we go to various locations, help people register to vote, provide photo IDs for them. We had offered some language that did make it into the bill that would make it clear that if there's an event going on that's being funded by a private entity, that we could still participate, provided we weren't the sponsor of the event, we weren't directing the event, we weren't financing the event, planning the event, that if we were invited to bring our mobile unit up there, that we could indeed still bring our mobile unit up there. That's our concern with.
Let us move right along, if we could, to the next opponent of the bill. That was the opponent. Becky Coristan
It's Garrettson, close.
Garrettson.
Hi, I am the Executive Director for Eagle Forum of Alabama, and we are in support of HB 194. Election integrity is of utmost importance in our country. Free and fair elections are the cornerstone to our democracy, and they are a legitimate role of government. And in our state, they are fully funded by our taxpayer dollars. We totally agree that there's absolutely no legitimate reason for anyone to have the chance to buy any aspect of the ballot equipment, people that are involved in the administration of our elections. This common sense bill is a way to ensure that future election integrity in the state of Alabama stays secure.
This is one of the most important election laws that we can pass during this legislative session. It's had wide support. It passed in the House 72 to 28, and we ask that you please vote a favorable report today. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Clark. This is going to conclude the public comments.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members, congregation. I oppose HB 194 because I'm a formerly incarcerated individual. I was released in 2017 with a 4-year probationary period. I successfully completed that period last year. I worked 3 jobs, I paid taxes, I raised my family, and you can imagine how excited I was to regain my right to vote. I immediately applied for a certificate of eligibility to register to vote, which the Board of Pardons and Paroles granted me. I took it down to my county registrar's office, and I was told by the clerk that I was not eligible to vote because of an outstanding charge that disqualified me. I recontacted the Board of Pardons and Paroles, and they assured me that my certificate of eligibility was intact. I didn't know what to do. I talked to my friends at the League of Women Voters and with Greater Birmingham Ministries, and they contacted the supervisor of the county registrar's office, who then reviewed my case and registered me to vote. That process took several months, but I'm now a registered voter in my county because the League of Women Voters and Greater Birmingham Ministries acted on my behalf. The language in this bill that talks about personal services, that talks about voter outreach, registration, and education is inappropriate for this state because it hurts people like me who need help, primarily because a lot of our county registrars are apparently inadequate. But when I need help, I need reliable help, and I need it from good organizations that have done this for decades. This bill prohibits that kind of work in our state. It criminalizes helping people like me.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Gavan.
So much has been made about personal services. The example the gentleman just shared, I don't see that being prohibited whatsoever. Notwithstanding any other law, no state or local public official responsible for the conduct of election. That's not the League of Women Voters. That's not any private group that wants to help someone. I mean, someone would be able to go to an attorney for help. Someone would be able to go to volunteer organizations for help. This is the government, not only the government. So I think this is a misunderstanding of what's here.
Mr. Chairman, I move favorable.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Seconded by Senator Elliott.
unreadiness.
So I have a question for the representative because I'm trying to understand if there is something that has happened already that makes it where somebody or regular organization, that's a civic engagement organization, donated something to the governmental to the government, and then that somehow impacted the election. There was some fraud or there was something done as a result of them donating items or donating resources that skewed the election in some kind of way. Is there some kind of example of that makes this bill important?
We had 7 counties in 2020 accept private donation that came from the Mark Zuckerberg money that flowed through that private nonprofit back during 2020. Now, I don't know what they did with the money. I don't know if it skewed the election one way or the other. But this bill simply states that we want to make sure that no private money gets into our public offices, those people who are responsible for conducting our elections.
Thank you, sir.
Can I just make one comment in response very quickly? So I think what I heard, and I could be wrong, but I think what I heard the League of Women Voters say is that this bill, not that the specific language outlaws any of that, but that there would be a chilling effect on registrars wanting to interact. So even the Secretary of State's office is saying this is going to make it more complicated for us to register voters, because if we're associated with private entities or private money, that might create some confusion about, does this bill say we can do it? Does this bill say that we cannot do it? So I think it's a chilling effect that is the concern. Thank you.
Senator Chandler moves a favorable report and seconded by Senator Orr. All those in favor say aye.
Roll call, please. No. And I think this is going to affect local officials as far as us.
No. Eight ayes and 2 nays, the bill favor report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Just for the record, the official watch was mean, it was on time. 50.